Welcome back to the Print 3D channel in this very special episode celebrating Veterans Day. Welcome back, and thank you for joining me here on the Print 3D channel as we celebrate Veterans Day. On this episode, we're going to do something really special. We're going to do some modeling in Cinema 4D and create a really cool sculpture that I think represents Veterans Day. For this sculpture, we're going to use the phrase, "got your six." And if you've heard that term before, you know what it means. It means someone's always got your back. And I think that's very special, and I think veterans would appreciate this. And once we're done with the modeling and a test print, we'll post this up on Thingiverse and let everybody else download and print this themselves to help celebrate Veterans Day. And I'll include a couple of hashtags that you guys can use when you post your pictures up on social media. So let's head over to Cinema 4D and start modeling. We'll slice it up in Simplify 3D and get it ready for printing on the gMax 1.5 XT+. Okay, so here we are in Cinema 4D. Here's the model we're going to build today. It's basically a set of extrudes. There's a cube object here at the bottom, and then I already went ahead and added US Army, and that's a set of extrudes also. So this is my final print file. As you can see here, it's in millimeters, so the project scale is correct. Now let's take a look at my working file. Okay, so here's my working file. I've put a plane down so it makes it easier to work around, and I added just a basic green texture to it. And I've grouped each of these objects, which here's the base and the type, and then the got your six here is the set of extrudes here in this null object. Each of these extrudes is built with a spline type object. So let's shut these off by clicking on these little red dots here next to each item, and that'll turn them off in the viewport. And let's straighten out our view here. And let's get a text spline. So the text spline here is under the spline objects. Text spline. And if you hit the S key, remember that frames everything up in the screen. And if you scroll your mouse back, you can pull back on the camera, or you can use the little buttons here and they do the same thing. Or if you remember correctly, you can use the 1, 2, and 3 key to move around in the scene. So the 1 key is the slide, the 2 key is the zoom, and the 3 key is the rotate. So if you select here in the text object, under text, we're going to set our first set of characters. Got. And we're going to select the font we want to use. And in this instance, I'm using Gill Sans. And I'm using their boldface. And we're going to center the type, or middle. We'll hit our S key to frame everything up, and then we'll scroll back to look at everything. Now we want to add an extrude object. In the extrude object, we'll drag our text in and make it a child of the extrude, and now we have our first extrude. We'll shuffle around here by using the 1 and 2 key to frame everything up. If we don't want to use the S key, we'll zoom in. So for this type, we only want to make this 66 millimeters tall. And our extrude object, we want to do 25 millimeters deep. And this time we will use our S key to frame everything up. Now we'll go to the cap section and add a fillet cap. We'll constrain it, and we'll drop this down to 2 millimeters. And we'll put 5 steps in it. And now we'll shuffle around. We'll use the 3 key to rotate our camera, our 1 key to slide it up, and our 2 key to zoom, 3 key to move around. I won't repeat these keys anymore. You'll just know which ones they are as I use them. So we're just moving around in the scene. We're framing it up. We're not going to use this framing, but what we are going to do is we're going to separate these characters into 3 different extrudes. Because once we join them all together and make our one object, we want them to be separate objects. Because if they're all slid together as one object now and we try to join them, we're going to have extra geometry where the joins are. So what we want to do is duplicate these. If you select the extrude and hold down your Command or Control key and make a copy and make another copy. So for the first one, this will be our G. And for the second one, this will be our O. And for the third, this will be our T. And now we have our 3 letters. And we can rename these if we want, but we're going to convert them. So we'll move our G over. And you want to select the text object, not the extrude object. So we'll move the T into place, and we'll move the G into place. And this is approximately where we want. When you're modeling in Cinema 4D, you should really do this more freestyle and just come in without a plan, but an idea of what you want to do. The next thing we need to do is merge the objects together after we make them editable. So we'll want to separate these at first, and we'll move them back together once they're editable. So to make them editable, well, I have a child sitting here, so I need to move that out. So these are 3 separate items. We want them to be separate, not childs of another item. To make it editable, right-click on the object and go Current State to the Object. This will make a duplicate of the object you are making editable. So we don't need this anymore, so we're going to delete that. And now we have all of our pieces. Now we need to merge these together to make one solid object. So we'll select them all individually by holding down the Command key and clicking individually. And then we want to do Connect Objects and Delete. So now we have our one object. I was in point mode, now we're back into object mode. So we have our one object. Now we can rename it. And when we're done, we'll merge them together. So we'll go Current State to Object. And we know that's our new one there. We'll take this one and delete it. We'll select all of these individually by holding down the Command key and clicking on them all. We'll right-click again, Connect Objects and Delete, and rename. This is a very tedious process, but there might be another way to do it, but this is the way I do it. Current State to Object, delete the original, open up all the layers, select the top layer, Command click on each one. Right click, Connect Objects and Delete. Rename it. Alright, we don't need all these other tags on here because we're going to be converting the geometry, and these are just for selection tags and Fong tags and material tags. So we can delete those. Now we can see these as they exist, and there they are. So we have our first 3 set of letters. The next thing we need to do is join these together, and that's using a bool object. We'll grab our bool object, we'll put our first letter in there, we'll put our second letter in there, and we'll put these in order because I like them to be in order. We'll select our bool, and we want to do a union. And there they are together. And we want to make sure that we create a single object, and we hide new edges. This is the method I found that works the best. So now we can come in and select these two and slide them together how we want them to sit in the little sculpture we're making, and I like that. Now we're only doing the G and the O. Same thing here. Current State to Object. Now we want to use this bool again because it's already got some settings we want. So we'll take these 2 objects out, and now we have our new set of objects, and it's the G and the O. And it even tells you here that we've unioned these 2 objects together as G and O. So we'll put that there. We'll slide the G and the O inside, and we'll put the T in also. We'll delete that little null object that was created, and now we have these 2 items. Now we can slide our T over and put it into position. And we'll set it about there. Again, we're freestyling, so this doesn't have to be exact. But I think that looks pretty good. Now we have this object, so we'll go ahead and right-click, Current State to Object. And there it is there, G-O-T. And we'll take that out. We'll take this, and we'll delete the objects inside because we can use that for the other letters. Okay, so we have our first set of letters for our model. This looks pretty good. Now that we have got done, we'll set up your, and then we'll also put in the 6. So let's take our got model and hit it by clicking twice on each of these. And we remember that our type came from a text object, S key, and we used Gil Sans. And we centered the type, and we used bold. And for the height, we used 66 millimeters. And we'll go ahead and grab an extrude object. We'll drop in our text and select the extrude object, and we want to go 25 millimeters. S key. In our text, put in what we want, your, and it's all set up. We'll do the same with this. We'll take each object and duplicate it after we set our caps up, and we can do that now. Fillet cap. We want a radius of 2, 5 steps, and we want to constrain it and create single object. So I just do it that way so I have it all. So now we can do is separate each one of these, and we'll bool these together the same way. But first we need to make 4 copies. So we'll drag, holding down the command key, holding down the command key, holding down the command key. Oop, that one's a child. Let's get that out of there. Each one of these, Y, O, U, and then finally R. Alright, now we have our letters. Let's go ahead and move them out of the way so we can separate them. Again, we don't need to rename them here because we're going to be creating objects. Let's get that R out of the way. And it looks like you can grab the extrude objects because that's what I'm grabbing and moving these around by. Okay, so we have our 4 letters, and we can grab all 4 of these. They already have the setting that we want for our caps, and they're the right depth. And we'll do them all at the same time. Current state to object. Okay. Delete. We have all of our letters. So let's rename them. Okay, we have our bool set up. Let's get rid of this extra piece here. We can drop in our Y, drop in our O. I like to put them in order. It's a union, so we can move in our Y until we like its position. Current state to object. Delete the 2 letters. There's our YO. Delete the extra null. Let's do this one at a time. Drop in the Y, or the U, I'm sorry. Slide it over. Current state to object. Delete those. Grab our YOU. Drop in our R. Delete the extra null object. Grab our R. Slide it into position where we want it. Okay, so now we have both of our sets. Current state to object. Okay, so now we have both of our sets. Delete the extra null object. You can turn got back on. Grab got. Slide it up. Select both items, S key. There we go. That's looking pretty cool. We have 2 objects here that we have to bool together yet. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's drop in the got, drop in the OR. Right click, current state to object. Let's delete those out of there. Now we have the full base. And we'll do the same for our 6. Next. 6. Kill sands. We're going to eyeball this one because I kind of want this one to just stand out on its own. So we'll move around. Let's grab our extrude. Oops. Let's grab our extrude. Drop our text object. Let's move it over here. And if we remember, on the extrude, the object, we did 25 millimeters. And I want this one to stick out a little bit, so we'll do 35 millimeters. Let's come around. So it sticks out a little bit. I think that looks pretty cool. Again, we're freestyling designing here. You come in with the plan and just go for it from there. put our fillet cap on there. We'll do 2, 5. Nothing on the back. We'll get this into position. We still have our bool. Right click, current state to object. Get rid of the original. Select all the items. Connect objects and delete. Call this 6. Oops. 6. Let's make sure we're not too far into the deck. That looks good. Drop our 2 items into the bool. Current state to object. Get rid of the items inside the bool. Pull out our base item. And there it is. Now if there's any geometry errors, we're going to run NetFabb Basic and fix those. So I'm not too worried about those. Although you should be concerned when you're modeling, I get that. But for this particular item, we're not going to worry about that right now. The next thing we need to do is build the base. So we'll drop in a cube. And I've already done some measurements, and I want mine to be 175 millimeters by 15 by 55. And that's my base. And we'll move it up onto the deck, half. We'll grab our newly created object, and we'll slide it over. We kind of want it to be in the base. So, actually, I think this needs to be a little bit bigger. That looks pretty good. Make sure all of it's aligned in the back. That looks pretty good. Let's move back into position here. Again, I'm just using the 1, 2, 3 keys. And we want a little fillet on here, just a little one. 1 millimeter, 5 steps is good. Just a little bit. Okay. Now we want to put a little bit of an angle on here so we can put our name in the front. So let's editable by selecting the object and hitting the C key. And now it's editable. Now let's switch views, and we want to go to a side view. We can see it. We'll go to the right side here. And we'll grab our point tool. And we'll do a rectangle selection. And we'll make sure that all elements are visible. And we'll select this top. And we're just going to move this back a little bit. And that'll leave a nice little bevel on that top edge and provide a flat surface for our nameplate. That looks good. Let's go back out to the front view, go back to model. There we go. There's our little front. Now it's up to you. From here we can join these 2 pieces together and we can go ahead and set it up for printing. I wanted mine to say US Army, so I put US Army, and again I just made a text object, just following the same procedures we did before. US Army. On this one, I wanted a long condensed font, so I went into one of my font collections and I picked out Black Extended. And this was only, I believe, 13 millimeters tall. And horizontal spacing 3 millimeters. Let's make sure this is centered. And then I just dropped it right in its same position where it sits now. Then I dropped an extrude object. Next into the extrude. Moved it out just a little bit. And then I moved it up and centered it. And that's how we ended up there. Now this is just a rough estimate of the model. Of course I took my time and I moved a lot of these letters around and I positioned them just perfectly. But you get the idea of how we created this file. So let's go back over to our original that's ready for print. And here it is. And now that we have a single model, and of course remember we have to bool all the objects together, and you need to do those one at a time. You can't just group them all together and do them all at once. It has to be one at a time to create all this perfect geometry. Now there are some imperfections, and that's why we're going to use NetFabb Basic to fix anything. And it's a really great tool, and I suggest you download it. I'll put the link down in the description so you can download NetFabb yourself. So what we'll want to do is go to File, Export, STL, and we'll drop it into this folder. That's my finals folder. We want to make sure in millimeters. We'll hit OK. And we're done. Alright, so here we are in NetFabb. Let's bring over our newly created STL file. And it's going to give us that we have some errors. The simplest thing to do is make sure it's selected. Come up to this menu, do Standard Analysis. It'll tell you that there's some things wrong. Surfaces closed, no. Surfaces orientable, no. Well, all you want is hit the repair button. I usually hit Update, Automatic Repair, Execute, Apply Repair, Remove Old Part. I know I went really quick through that. You can find out how to use NetFabb Basic online. This is a pretty simple program. Part is selected. I go Export Part to STL. It's going to call it Repaired. Let's put it in our folder. Let's optimize it. Gives us a check mark. Export. Here, let's quit out of NetFabb. We don't need to save this file. Simplify 3D. I've already went ahead and dropped in the model. So we've got it. I had to flip it around because it was facing the other way. And we want it to print on its back here like this. That's how I set it up this way. So it has a pretty flat bottom here on the back. And I didn't want any curling because sometimes that happens with 3D printing. I also set up multiple processes because I didn't want the same amount of infill. I wanted a higher amount of infill near those top layers to make sure they were nice and smooth. So in the first setup I have a 10% infill and it stops at 21 millimeters. And at the second process the infill is 20%, starts at 21 millimeters. Okay, so prepare to print, select all, hit OK. This will take a few seconds and we should be ready to print. Alright, so there's our preview G-code. That looks pretty good. It looks like we might have some issues here. This type might not be thick enough, but we're going to go for it. We're going to see how it looks. It says it's going to take about 9 hours and 49 minutes. Let's go ahead and hit play. And we'll speed this up just a little bit. And you can see where the infill changes over. Finish off with those top layers. And I'm also running 5 top layers on this, so it has a nice smooth finish on the top. So that should help out too. So okay, we're all set to print. Let's go ahead and save the tool pass off to the disk and head over to the gMax 1.5 XT Plus and get this printing. Okay, so I have the SD card loaded up with our Got Your 6 model. Let's load up some of that MatterHackers PRO PLA in the color of gray and fire up the printer. I'll set up that time-lapse camera and I'll see you guys on the other side. Alright, as you can see, the print is done, but it took well over 9 hours and 40 some odd minutes that Simplify 3D said. In fact, it took almost 11 hours to print. But nonetheless, it turned out awesome, and it's still on the print bed, so let's go ahead and take it off. I've got my trusty scraper. There is some side curling going on the print, so this should be an easy lift off. So let's go ahead and do this. Yeah, it's coming up pretty easy. Take a little bit of effort here. Let's go to the other side and see what we can do here. Here, cracking loose. And the part is free. Awesome. There we go. All right, that turned out great. I am really happy with this. I'll put some close-ups in at the end like I normally do, but this turned out awesome. There is some, what I call curl ripples, and that happens when the edges peel up from the print bed and it causes a little ripple. But since I printed it standing up, it should still have a perfectly flat base, and it does. This turned out awesome. All right, so it turned out pretty great. I'm pretty happy with the print. Like I said before, I'll put the link down in the description so you can download and print this yourself. and give it to somebody you think needs a little extra help this Veterans Day. So thank you for joining me here on the Print 3D channel for this very special episode celebrating Veterans Day. I hope you enjoyed this. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, comment and like on those videos, and join me again on the very next episode here on the Print 3D channel.